All right, welcome back to the Crucial Convo podcast. You are tuned in with your host, Kojo Afriye. What is going on, y'all? We got to talk about a few things tonight, family. We're going to talk about where we're at right now because, where we're at right now with violence, with young people in rap and the street. All of these things intersect in a way that I think we should be concerned about. And I want to talk about it a little bit. And we're going to let me get into the incident in Chicago. If you haven't been paying attention, this is a shooting that happened in the River North neighborhood, which River North, if you ever been to Chicago, River North is just kind of the north part of downtown, or the north part of what we call the Loop.
We need more ambulances out here. We don't have nearly enough.
How many more ambulances are needed?
At least 2 or 3.
The ambush happened just before midnight outside of an album release party for Chicago rapper Mello Buckzz. 18 people shot in total, 4 of them killed. And tonight, we know their names. One of them, the rapper's boyfriend, 23-year-old Devontae Williamson, 25-year-old Leon Henry, 27-year-old Aviance King, and 26-year-old Taylor Walker. Now, many people who were at the party are close friends of the rapper, whose real name is Melanie Doyle. Police have not said if they have any suspects tonight.
Now, this was a release party for a female drill rapper, 24-year-old named Mello Buckzz. This is just not a regular shooting, right? So this was gang related, but the problem is with music now, it's not really separated. You used to have people who rapped, who got into rap, who were good at rapping. And I'm not saying Homegirl is not good at rapping. I'm not even here to diss her art. We can talk about her art in a minute, but it used to be where you had people who rapped, who had some type of skill, who rapped, and they had gang affiliation. They had street affiliation. You know what I'm saying? In the 80s and 90s, that's what it was. Rap didn't just start getting violent this year, last year, or the year before. Rap has had violence in it for a long time. Hip hop there's always been an element of violence within rap music. You know what I'm saying? But the difference is that now the kids now are actually doing it, and they're rapping about things that are essentially, really nudging at their ops, really nudging at their enemies to come and do something. So right now, let's take a look at Mello Buckzz. She's 24. We're talking about kids who are in their 20s, and the stuff that they're rapping about now is just like, it's not even, it's entertainment, but it's also just literal gang banging on wax, because a lot of people are talking about smoking on their ops, killing their ops, what they do to their ops, and it's happening. Either they're doing it or people directly around them are involved, that's what's made rap so dangerous. So before we get into her music, obviously the shooting happened at Artis Restaurant and Lounge. From what I understand, they got this restaurant and lounge. They've only been open 3 months, right? But River North, like I said, River North is just north of the Loop. River North, if you've ever been in Chicago, isn't known, or in the past was not known to be a violent place. Chicago's changed so much. Downtown used to be a safe zone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, South Side, West Side, even in the suburbs, South suburbs, sometimes in the West suburbs, you had, violence. But downtown was typically a place where, in my day, I didn't think about violence. I didn't think about getting shot downtown. Downtown Chicago doesn't even sound right. It doesn't even sound right. But times have changed. So anyway, if you look on the internet, there's all type of people who get into the gang politics. I'm not here to really get into the gang politics because they talk about how Mello Buckzz, the female rapper, the artist, her boyfriend was killed, and they talk about how she's affiliated with this gang and then that gang. As we talk about the problems in the black community, as we talk about, people are talking about, Donald Trump, they're talking about Democrat, Republican policies that are hurting black people. We can talk about that, but be honest with you, I'm the most concerned about our young people who are in their 20s. I'm extremely concerned. And again, this story does not represent all black kids that are in their 20s, but our youth, part of the youth in black culture is certainly listening to the music and also involved and around a lot of dangerous stuff. I'll let this play for a minute, and then I'm going to go back to the stuff I was listening to as a teenager, because I listened to some crazy, reckless music too, like a lot of teenagers do. But the culture, the real life culture, is way different than what it was back in the day. So let me play some of her music.
Making music, call that Looney Tunes. I won't even argue, put my brothers on your head. And they might pop out dressed in black, but everybody seeing red. Get the spraying at your face, put some hot shit through your dread. Steady talking, now you up there with them, you ain't this the dead. I be looking for some problems, don't know niggas want no smoke. I turn that little boy to a pack for real and roll him, now I'm choking. Better not catch me off no boss, I be up it for no reason. Hop in traffic and I take off, I don't gotta put no keys in. Niggas chasing it, they faking, acting like they bougie sipping. Pour up wacky by yourself, but sip on Tris around some bitches. Oh, you outside with your pipe, I don't know why, cause you ain't fishing. Should've popped out playing ball, cause we gon' pop out with them switches.
What I think about often is, like, we often really do dance to a lot of murder and death, and it's part of entertainment. You know, I don't think we'll ever really get away from it, but I think the saddest thing is that, you know, again, the line between real life and art is constantly, it's so close together now with these young artists and young kids. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's become common. You know, Chicago, I really want to understand, man, like, you know, why we're not focused on this is the problem culturally, why we are not, why politicians, why people who call themselves leaders, you know, all of the people who say they advocate for the black community, why they're not concerned, right? Because, you know, there was a time, I'm gonna play this clip from KRS and Eazy-E talking back in like 93. And there was a time we could blame corporations, but the time has changed now.
Let's talk about the business of gangster rap. A lot of people say that it's reached its peak. I don't think so. Really? You think it's going to go farther? Where is it going to go? Over the top. Uh-oh, Chris?
I mean, actually, the title gangster rap doesn't even really exist, because real gangsters don't rap. Gangsters, so maybe, you know, I would go more into the idea of gangster record companies. If the real gangsters out here are the ones who own the gangster rapper. And to me, I mean, I don't know enough about the quarrel between Eazy-E and Dr. Dre to even jump into that. But what I will say is that the true gangster is the one that owns the gangster rapper. And if there is some validity to what you're saying, then I would say the true gangster would probably be right here.
So, you know, you put that in context, it's kind of like, you know, now in 2025, there's all kind of people rapping who are gangsters. Well, what is a gangster? A gangster, once you are surrounded by gangsters, you're gonna be a gangster. You know, you part of it, because that's what it is. When Tupac surrounded himself with Death Row, when Tupac surrounded himself, not with the artists on Death Row, but when he surrounded himself with the blood affiliation, and he went and the minute he went and put hands on Orlando Anderson, it wasn't music business no more. It's gangster shit. It's the street. So I'm concerned about our youth right now, because it's gang life and music is so intertwined. It's almost like, if you're a rapper, you almost can't even be a rapper without having all this stuff with you. And it used to be a time where you had rappers who, you know, the people who was in the street like that, they weren't visible. They weren't throwing up gang signs and so much in the video. They were not talking about stuff that's happening in the street in the video. Now it's gotten to the point where people are gang banging. They literally are gang banging on wax. And Chicago is a place, I always tell people, Chicago is, you know, listen, there are gangsters everywhere. There's violence everywhere. There's real gangsters, real, you know, people everywhere who you should be afraid of, right? But Chicago is a place where it's where people actually really die. You know, it's not a place where you can pretend to mess around with the gang thing and you'll be okay, or you could perpetrate. Chicago is a place where it's going to happen to you. If you get involved, you get around it enough, it's going to happen to you. or it's going to be some attempt on your life in some way or some fashion. So you can't really play around with it. And what's more dangerous now is that, there was a time, and I'm going to get into another story that happened when I was a teenager, right? Because again, life, everything is cyclical, right? Everything is a cycle. And when I was 20, in my 20s or in my teens, there were so many different stories of people getting killed, and you thought gang violence and whatever it is was the biggest thing in your coming of age. And then as you get older, you're like, damn, you know what? You looking at these kids are like, man, these kids are kids, but they're really adults. They're in their 20s, right? And they're at an age where they should be focused on family. They should be focused on building their future, right? And I'm not saying this isn't about the girl Mello Buckzz. It isn't about her. She's just another artist. And the female rappers don't have anything really to look at other than what they see, right? So it's a little bit of mix of I'll play another one of her songs too. It's a kind of a mix between Cardi B, not even Nicki Minaj, because it's more like Cardi B. It's kind of like Ratchet, Sexy Red, Ratchet mixed with gangster, and it's it's I don't know. I don't know the pattern for a young girl to really get in the game and start rapping. I don't know what the pattern is, because she's either going to be twerking, ice spicing it out, twerking like stripper music. You a stripper and a gangster. And it's like you merging two of the most craziest worlds, and we used to be able to say, the reason why I played the KRS One clip, we used to be able to say, you know what, it's the record companies. The record companies, they're not giving people a choice. And the record company, I don't think so. Not anymore. Record companies are not to blame anymore, because you don't need record companies. Record companies come in way later now. When people are creating art, creating music and putting out music, the videos are done way cheaper now. I'm a recording engineer, so I know what time it is. You can record music, you can shoot videos. Obviously I know how to edit videos. All this stuff can be done way cheaper. So everybody's creating art first. Record companies come way later on. So what these young kids decide to rap about and decide to do, and the imagery, what they decide to do happens long before record companies come in. Record companies just come in on whatever's hot, and then they join in and sign them. You know what I'm saying? So I think about rappers like Pop Smoke. I think about, all the rappers that have died. I can't even count how many have died. It's too many of them. You know what I'm saying? And some of them I don't even know their names. But like a Pop Smoke, for example. I mean, he had been rapping only a couple of years, you know what I'm saying, and ended up getting killed. Whole nother different story. But when we talk about Chicago, getting back to Mello Buckzz, right? There was a time where you had a couple of main gangs. And again, I'm not going to get into the street politics, because I don't do that on this channel. But there used to be main gangs. Now you have, in Chicago and a lot of other places, but Chicago, for example, has all these different crews, right? All these different crews. So they may be under the umbrella of one gang, but there's all these different crews. So there's real street beef that is so complex, way more complex than it used to be in the 80s or the 90s, right? And I did a show on Larry Hoover, I did a show on Larry Hoover, the founder of Gangster Disciples, couple episodes ago, talking about, him, doing enough time federally. And, I don't know where his case is at state-wise, but I know he was pardoned, or not pardoned. His sentence was vacated federally. But anyway, it's so far away from the founders of some of these gangs. And, this shooting that happened on River North isn't about music. It's obviously not about music, and it's not about a personal beef. It's about gang banging, no matter how we want to look at it, or street beef. But most of the street beef in Chicago is gang related. You know what I'm saying? Just like in LA, a lot of the street beef is gang related. So the root of it is gang banging, right? And how do you solve that? how do we get to a point where we start looking at the culture of young people? I hate the term YN because I know what it means. I hate the term YN. If you don't know what a YN is, look it up. But some people might want to blame drill music. But honestly, I kind of look at it like I said, I analyze this stuff and I say, man, what was I listening to, when I was in my 20s? What was I listening to when I was a teenager? All the stuff you might call gangster rap. But there was definitely a clear line, I think, more of a line between rappers and the street, and of course those things intersected. But again, like Chicago, the difference now is the kids have access to make art, to create music, to go on YouTube and put this stuff up there, right? And it's people know your location. If you're going to do a video, they know your location. If you're doing a release party, they know your location. If you just hanging out, because everybody puts where they are all the time. So that's how rap got so dangerous, because the kids now don't have a problem including the street in there. And Chicago's just a different type of place, in my opinion, that the culture and the way the city's structured has not, and I've said this for a long time, people who know me well know I've talked about the structure of Chicago, and when we look at the kids now who are, I'm gonna say kids, adults. When we look at the adults now who are in their 20s, adults need more. America needs to provide more productivity for younger kids, because music, you should be able to do music without involving the street. And it's not America's fault, but I'd say in the black community, it's a problem for our culture. It's a problem that we're going to have to talk about and solve. I know nobody wants to talk about it, and most of the time people just attribute everything to poverty, and poverty is part of the conversation. But culturally, and I even hate to include it in the hip hop culture, but let's keep it funky. It's part of hip hop culture, whether we like it or not. Things that happen in rap music and anything attached to rap music is part of hip hop culture. I love hip hop culture. I'm of hip hop culture, right? But there is a cancer and a problem within the culture of hip hop, which is, a subculture of Black American culture that we have to really look at and say, why is it getting so crazy? Because people always say, people always say the music, the times are a reflection of the music, or is the music a reflection of the times, right? And I believe that music is a reflection of the times, and I think that that's where we're at, that the young people are extremely desensitized. Young people don't care how dangerous it is, as far as, going out here, putting this music out and talking about smoking on your ops. It's just crazy work to me. Again, y'all might be used to it. Everybody is not, shocked by this type of stuff, but for me, when I hear people talk about smoking your ops on a record, and people put names on there and all that, and again, this ain't just happening in Chicago, it's happening in New York too, what I'm saying, and a lot of the beefs and the game banging is deeply here in New Jersey and New York too, but having it inside the music is like it's like a advertisement to get into some gunplay. How do we address the culture of gang life in Chicago? Because if it isn't addressed, I think this is going to go on a long time. Somebody got to start working on addressing to change the culture, because I have kids. I'm like, yo, you got to be able to separate. It takes a lot for a parent to make sure that you talk to your kids and make sure they're separating the music from real life. And a lot of these kids, man, as they grow up, they are not separating the two. There was a time that let me go into when I was a teenager. So going back to 94, right? 94, there was, if you're from Chicago, or even if you're not from Chicago, you may have heard of Yummy Sandifer. And Yummy Sandifer was a 10-year-old or 11-year-old when he got killed by some older gang members. He was a gangster disciple. He didn't call him a gangster disciple, but he was part of the gangster disciples of BDs. And basically Yummy Sandifer, he shot another girl who was 14, not on purpose. It was a stray bullet. He ended up killing this girl. It brought so much heat on the Gangster Disciples in Roseland on the south side, and it brought so much heat that some older kids, 14 and 16-year-old brothers, were assigned to kill this 11-year-old kid because they didn't want him to talk. So there was a time I wanted to even do, I always wanted to do a movie on it. I always thought it was such an intriguing story. And again, I remember at the time I was like 15 or so, or 16 or so at the time, and I thought how sad it was. And now the stuff that's happening, I mean, this story that I'm talking about isn't even something that people would be shocked by. That's what's crazy. At the time, this was like a big story. I don't think people would be shocked now by an 11-year-old getting killed by a 14 and 16-year-old to shut him up and silence him. I don't think people would even be shocked by it no more, because gang banging is turned into something totally demon time different, right? Demon time. The brothers who shot Yummy Sandifer, they spoke out a couple of years ago, and I'm going to play a little bit of this clip just to refresh people if you haven't never heard of this story. Let me play this real quick.
There are some stories that just stick with you through the years. And for our Tanya Francisco, it was the story of Yummy Sandifer, young man who at 11 years old had a rap sheet longer than most adults. He died violently, gangland style, by 14 and 16-year-old brothers.
Well, tonight, for the first time, we hear from both of those brothers about that fateful night, what they've learned, and their hopes for the future. It's a story you'll only see on WGN.
At 36, Craig Hardaway is older, wiser, but he's also a little nervous when it comes to this interview.
I always saw media as the enemy.
20 years after a notorious murder that thrust him into the national spotlight, for the first time ever, he and his younger brother Derek are talking about the case that changed their lives forever.
It took me years to really admit and accept my role in it.
It was an unusually chilly September night in 1994 as the body of an 11-year-old was loaded into the back of an ambulance. He had been shot twice in the back of the head in a hit ordered by the leaders of the Black Disciples.
What happened that night?
Chaos.
Despite numerous requests over the years, this is the first interview Craig Hardaway has agreed to do. Craig was only 16 years old when his mugshot was plastered on TV, arrested for the murder of 11-year-old Robert Yummy Sandifer. His brother Derek, 14 at the time, was too young for his mugshot to be released. He was convicted of driving the getaway car. All three, Craig, Derek, and Yummy, members of the same gang, chasing money, respect, and trying to make a name for themselves.
For me, it was more like identity. It was more like, okay, I want to belong to something. I want to be a part of something.
It's an addiction. It's a strong addiction, and it pulls you in quick.
It was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Warren G was on the streets.
The summer of 1994 saw Nate Dogg and Warren G's Regulate topping the charts, O.J. Simpson preparing for the trial of the century, and Chicago well on its way to recording 930 homicides, the second highest on record. Among the dead, 14-year-old Siobhan Dean, shot in the head by a stray bullet during a shooting spree in the city's Roseland neighborhood that injured two other teens. Chicago police quickly identified 11-year-old Robert Sandifer as the gunman. That led to an intense 3-day manhunt. Gang leaders decided that Robert needed to be silenced because he knew too much, so they ordered Craig to kill him.
Why did Robert die?
By means of not my control.
And was it your life versus his life?
Absolutely.
You thought it was that simple as either you do this or you die.
And that's how it always boils down. It's not like any wiggle room when you live in that lifestyle.
So you're saying you had no other choice?
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Derek refused to leave his brother's side.
A lot of people don't know that he actually took me home, and I can just feel someone right. So when I asked him what's going on and he told me everything, I refused to let him go by himself.
I should have been more of a big brother and just get out, right? But at the time, that ain't the way you think. I'm still a minor. We still kids.
Hours after the murder, both brothers were in custody, and months later, they were convicted felons. Craig, 60 years for murder, Derek, 45, for driving the getaway car. They were the only two ever tried in the case, even though they say others were involved.
Why not tell?
Because I was believing in the foolishness they was telling me.
This story with Yummy was a big story back in '94, and it was kind of the culmination of a crazy summer in Chicago, and kind of the culmination, I thought at the time, just of how far gang violence was spiraling. But man, obviously, as time has gone by, we got through the '90s, we got into the 2000s, and we're now, what is this now? 2025. So we're now, that was like 30 years. No, that was more than 30 years ago. It's about 30. My math is right. About 32 years ago now. But anyway, point being is that, where our youth are right now, we got to figure out a way to really deal with this, because the music is telling you, when you look at, I don't care if they rapping off beat. I don't care if they talking slick stuff. That's just part of it. I'm a realist. I don't think that rap is going to be all about, flowers and having a good day and being happy. I think there'll always be some tough talk within rapping. There's be gun talk. There's fight talk. There's slick talk, whatever you want to say. It's always going to be part of rap culture, and of hip hop culture. But where gangs and rap intertwine, as you see, even going back to the story from 9/4, a lot of the gang shootings back then were not music related. So that's why I went back to that story, to give people give you kind of a kind of something to look at and say, let's compare it, because you had a lot of gang stories, you had a lot of killings back in the 90s. When you compare it to now, they don't have music involved, because back then you could not make music, and a lot of the people who gang bang who was in the street didn't make music, right? And again, the ones who did make music did not involve gang culture in the art. So this is where gang culture and art intertwine, where they become married so close. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist. You can go through the street, through the politics of the street, and talk about this person's beef and who been dissing who, and all that. If you want to get deeper into that, you definitely can. There are plenty of videos who go specifically into the beef. People had a whole life ahead of them, but this is a real problem. This is a real problem. And I wanted to do this episode just to talk about that, because ever since the drill scene has started, kind of with the Chief Keef, drill music started back in like the 2010s, the Chief Keefs, the Lil Durks, Little Reese, G Herbos, all them, all artists just trying to make music, you know what I'm saying? And if you make it to the age I am now, if you make it into your 30s, into your 40s, you're going to see life different, but you need time to get there. And a lot of these kids / adults are not getting that far, and it's becoming so dangerous just to make music. Again, the riverfront is downtown. The riverfront is not in the hood. Riverfront is not in the hood. So it shouldn't even be a place where that happens. But again, Chicago's different now. People will shoot you anywhere, on the expressway, downtown, Michigan Avenue. It don't matter. Anybody can get it anywhere. And to me, when we talk about the black community, the black youth, when we talk about that, this is one of the biggest problems that, I don't have all the answers, but this is one of the biggest problems that we have in our culture. We have to figure out a way to change that, because we're losing so many people who are involved in stripper culture, gang culture, street culture. It's so much now, and it's actually gotten worse than what it was before, right? So you guys let me know what you think. I just wanted to drop this real quick. You tapped into the Crucial Combo podcast. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, if you're going to Chicago, go when it's warm. Don't go when it's cold. And I'll say this real quick too, because I've met a lot of friends through the music industry and artists who ain't been to Chicago and want to go to Chicago. If you go to Chicago, don't play around and be safe. You know what I'm saying? Just like you be anywhere else. But the street violence in Chicago is real. RIP to the people who lost their lives at River North. And we got to figure out an answer to this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. You tapped into your boy Kojo on the Crucial Combo podcast. Until the next one, I'm out.